Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Double Feature Podcast. I am one of your lovely hosts, Dean, joined by my great co-host, David. David, how the hell are you doing?
I'm doing better now that it's not hot as hell in this room. It's a big improvement.
That's a good feeling.
Yeah.
Well, here at the Double Feature Podcast, we're going to take two movies like we do every week, pair them up together, talk about them, see which one is the best. David, what are the two movies we're watching this week?
Well, this week we got a couple gambling movies. Let's get right into those log lines. First, we have Rounders. A card-sick law student gets back into the underground poker game to save his flopped friend from debt, or worse. On the other end, we have 21, a cash-poor Harvard hopeful counts cards in Vegas with a secret team to afford his tuition.
All right, sounds like we got two of the same movie.
You know, you'd be more right than you think, because it really is true that these were oddly similar. But, you know, every action movie is the same. Why can't every gambling movie be the same, you know?
It's true, it's true. You ever seen any of these ones before?
Yeah, 21 I've seen before a few times, and it's always been one of those movies that comes on and people think it's a fun watch. But this time, of being able to focus on it a little more, I got a little bit out of it. But Rounders was also pretty interesting, I guess, to break into everything. Super Taxi Driver is what it reminded me of a little bit, like with the music, with the seediness, with the, but it also like
Rounders?
if they mix Taxi Driver with Good Will Hunting, because Matt Damon plays exactly like he does in Good Will Hunting a little bit, or maybe it's just Matt Damon.
That's just Matt Damon. Like that, I think Matt Damon is just like Good Will Hunting. You know, that's based on a true story.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like this is because originally I guess they wrote him and Ben Affleck wrote Good Will Hunting to be like an espionage thriller, in which I'm no kidding, like the FBI chases after Will Hunting because of what he's doing, and like with the math genius thing. I can't really remember the whole story, but then a producer they got in contact with, like convinced them not to do that. So part of me feels like somehow that bled over into this, but you know.
All right then. Okay.
You learn something.
I really want to see the Will Hunting spy thriller.
You know, I think it's still out there somewhere. You might be able to find the first draft of it.
I'm super down with that. That sounds lit.
Yeah. But, you know, other than that, we had some interesting performances. I especially liked a good Ed Norton performance. I mean, like, sleazy guy in this film.
Oh, I think he does a great job in Rounders. Like, I think Ed Norton's like the standout in that movie.
Definitely. I mean, him getting kind of, I wouldn't say run-of-the-mill, but a very, who I would expect John Turturro to play kind of character.
Yeah.
John Malkovich is kind of the main antagonist in this movie, but doesn't show up for most of the movie, but he still does a really funny job. I love it.
I like John Malkovich in this movie. I mean, who do you think did the best performance in 21? Because I feel I have a very controversial answer.
You know, that's a good question, because throughout the movie, Jim Sturgis, the main character, as Ben Campbell, I kind of got into how subtle his character quirks are. I know it's just 21's much more of a mainstream movie than Rounders. I think Rounders is a little bit more of a crime piece, whereas 21 is definitely made for some popcorn eaters. Kate Bosworth, kind of, I like her energy in the movie. She had a really good character. I'm a big fan of Josh Gad every time he shows up. He's a pretty funny guy. But yeah, I think if anything, I'd have to go with Kate Bosworth. She was pretty good.
Not going with He Who Shall Not Be Named.
Yeah, I guess now there's the glaring detail that we kind of forgot a little bit that Kevin Spacey was in this movie.
And he's like in a lot of this movie.
Yeah, well, he's basically the mentor character. And listen, we don't like what Kevin Spacey did.
We know exactly what he did, but man, he turned into a good performance in this film. I'd say. Yeah,
it's the classic. Not even to go into Hollywood cancel culture, because what he did definitely is worth losing a career over if it's everything that it was confirmed true is true. And it sucks because I was a big fan of him in House of Cards and in other movies, and he always does kind of that's one thing about Kevin Spacey is he's always playing Kevin Spacey, just with a different twist on it.
Yeah, it's like a thing with a lot of actors where actors play themselves. They just churn one aspect of them up to 11 for a part.
Yeah, and Kevin Spacey's snarkiness is what comes through in this movie. But
I think it's that sleaziness in this one. Like you get a lot of sleaze and a lot of snark kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, first it comes out with the professor angle of he's the quick-witted professor, but then it comes out in that he has this secret dark side to him that they kind of tease a lot more than they should in this movie, because it ends up not being a whole lot at the end. But, we'll get there when we get there. Why don't we start running through... we kind of got a taste of both movies. Let's run through Rounders real quick.
Oh, we're starting with the champ over here.
Yeah, so the opening sequence, right?
Yes.
It starts... both of these movies kind of have bookends to them in a way, but I think it's like... Rounders does start at the beginning, where we see Matt Damon's character take $30,000 from the top of the closet in cash, and he goes to an underground poker game.
Not just the top of the closet. Like he takes $30,000 that he has hidden throughout his apartment.
That's true. I mean, he's you can tell this guy's got an itch, and he goes to the underground poker game, of which I guess John Malkovich runs out of an apartment. I couldn't really tell.
I don't think it's an apartment. I think it's like some sort of basement in like the village
or something. I mean, basically he goes to this store, does a secret knock, gets in, there's a cage window, he collects his chips, and then you go and see all these, like, what is described to be an underground sort of card playing casino, but there's a lot of rich people in this like dive of a warehouse. It's interesting.
I think it's supposed to be like because I think in the movie they say like John Malkovich plays a character named Teddy KGB, and he has connections to like the Russian mafia.
Yeah, that's true. It definitely had the Russian mafia vibe. I'll give it that.
Oh yeah, and that's the whole thing about like the underground quote unquote casino, where basically he's just running no limit like hold'em games where you can come in with like a shit ton of money in the village and you can just win money, and the Russian mob kind of backs it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
I mean, what got me about it was like that there are a bunch of super rich people in that room, and I'm sitting there like, you guys can buy a flat screen or something. You could to watch the boxing game on, but not
yeah, but they got that. They gotta feed that itch, man. They gotta feed that itch.
But he goes to play cards with KGB, John Malkovich character, and Matt Damon's character is skilled, certainly, in not only playing the skill of poker, but then also reading people. And lo and behold, he loses to KGB all of his money. And that's a devastating blow, because how are you supposed to explain to your girlfriend when you get home, as he has to, that you lost tens of thousands of dollars in an underground
What is it?
poker
He
game?
lost $30,000, which I think was like his, like all the cash he had. Like, because I don't know if it was because his girlfriend gets like super pissed at him.
Yeah, it causes,
and that comes up the whole movie.
Yeah, and that's kind of the running conflict, is that there's a conflict between him and his girlfriend over, she thinks that he's addicted to playing cards and that he's going to ruin his life over it. He tries to get clean, and then it's, he finds his way back after Ed Norton's character finds his way back into his life.
Mr. Worm.
Yeah, the star of the show in my mind. Basically, Ed Norton's character gets out of prison for, I think they said that he was distributing printed credit cards on the street.
He was distributing some very shady shit.
Yeah.
Also, how do you get the nickname Worm?
I mean, when you listen, I think it's deserved. I thought it was a perfect name for his character because he's very wily. He's very.
Oh no! Don't get me wrong. I get it. It's perfect for his character. Total scumbag guy like that. But what in this man's life where people are like, "Yo, your name is now Worm. I bestow this nickname upon you," and he accepts it, and that is now what he wants everyone to call him.
Oh, I could totally see him accepting it. But that's a really good preemptive deleted scene where we find out where Lester actually got his nickname. Because part of me is like, it's probably just a generic street name. He's always in the dirt and the slime and the scum. He's a worm. But then there's another part of me that's like, I hope there's not something very specific that earned him that name.
Right, he didn't like just wave his dick around and people were like, goddamn fucking worm.
Yeah, no kidding. That's Kevin Spacey, so
we'll get to him.
So let's see here. We move on. So Ed Norton, when Matt Damon and him meet back up, is immediately trying to get back into the game. He's got debts he needs to pay. That'll become another running conflict in this movie. And they go to a poker game at, I assume, some sort of like frat house.
I don't really know what it is. It's like, because it's not a country club, because like everyone there's way too young.
Yeah, and I assumed frat house because of that, or like, it could be some Montauk rich kid kind of mansion. Dead air. I lost my train of thought. The power of editing.
The train of thought. It happens.
So this is kind of where the inciting incident of the movie is. Matt Damon decides to play along because he can't beat the itch, and he goes in with Ed Norton, and they make a killing hustling for cards.
And that is more or less the entire movie, is Matt Damon and Ed Norton just hustling like cards to try and pay back Edward Norton's debt. And then Matt Damon's girlfriend, Jo, just leaves him. Which, honestly, I thought, okay, I need to know, did you think Matt Damon's girlfriend in this movie, Jo, was kind of a bitch?
I think she was justified. I mean, like, the thing about this movie is that it combines the gambling in a new way. Normally, gambling movies are pretty heisty. They're a lot more about the gambling itself and the skill involved in earning something through the gambling. But I like how this movie kind of created an addiction storyline.
Yeah.
And trying to get clean and struggling to do that because his friend is enabling him. So I think, she's justified. She's a very, the character of his girlfriend, Gretchen Mol, who plays just Jo. That's the only name she has in the movie.
Yeah.
No last name. But, so her character is very soft, very mousy. And I think that she plays the type of person who would react in that way. And I think, it's a little bit deserved. I mean, you lose $30,000. You probably have a problem. And
I mean, I'm just saying, so he lost 30 grand, but he had to win 30 grand. He was probably, honestly, he probably won more than that because after he loses the 30 grand, I don't think she works. I think she's just a straight law student, and he's probably paying rent
Well, I mean,
with that gambling money.
that's the other thing is that them being law students, they're very dedicated. You know, they probably have scholarships and things. And I'm sure the way she looks at it is like, as a character, that is, she's probably looking at it from the standpoint of like, you know, this puts me at risk as well as you. And I've stood by you through this, yet you still want to go out with your friend who just got out of prison after 5 years to most likely lose more money and get involved with the Russian mob. Yeah, it's kind of a sticky situation.
I mean, you know, I'm saying is that like, so all I'm saying is that she knew that he had like, I can't say a gambling problem, because even Matt Damon doesn't say it's gambling, which throughout the movie, like, would you say that what he's doing is gambling, or is it just like making money, like he's working a trade more than actually gambling on chance?
Well, there's kind of that point made in the movie. There's a scene where him and his girlfriend Joe are fighting, and she's basically leaving him, and they're out. The fight goes out onto the street, and he makes the note that poker isn't gambling; it's a skill game. And I think that's where he starts to take it. Is that kind of similarly with 21? There's a skill to playing these games as long as you know what you're doing. And there is. I mean, you know, counting cards is just as legitimate as counting the odds in Texas Hold'em, and
you're reading people, you know, things like that.
It's kind of, I liked a little bit more of the strategy that Rounders has, though it was interesting to actually learn what counting cards is in 21, because the only other movie I can think of that has counting cards in it is obviously Rain Man. And I guess it's also The Hangover has counting cards in it, but both of those movies, it's kind of left up to like, I can't really tell what it is, and 21 actually explains what it is a little bit, to the point where I could follow along. But this is actually another thing that kind of annoyed me about both of these movies, right? The incessant need to explain to me, the viewer, what the main character is thinking while they're doing their thing, right?
Yeah.
Because for me, I kind of like the wonder and glamour of looking at a main character doing their skill, quote unquote, and just watching them do their thing. I don't like necessarily to know exactly what it is, because I think when you break the element of there's a little bit of magic to what the character does as a strength, kind of ruins the silver screen in this over it, and I kind of start to get a little too serious. It gets a little too serious after a point.
Yeah, well, I think in Rounders, like, because I play cards, I've played poker, house games, I played at casinos.
Sure.
But like, what he's doing, that's not even like a skill anymore. He's psychic. Like,
after a certain point, yeah.
Well, when he goes into the judge game, so there's a point in the film where Mike walks in because he's a law student, he's dropping off like some paperwork, and like all the judges and the lawyers are playing like poker or whatever in somebody's office, and he cold reads everyone's hand at the table up to like the suit of the cards.
Yeah.
Like cold to everyone, and he's only in the room for like less than a minute. Like, I think he sees the cards get dealt out, and then he just cold reads the whole room.
Yeah, which is an interesting scene because it really justifies how deep he is into the poker game. But on the other hand, this is kind of what I meant, where there was a mix of Good Will Hunting in here, where he just kind of has this genius trait that you don't really know where it comes from, because Will Hunting, they make a point of that character as to where that skill comes from. You know, that movie is all about finding out. I mean, that's the point of Robin Williams' character, is finding out the root cause of why he can remember everything. Yeah. But this one, it's just kind of like there. And I think that's one of the things that I got annoyed with is, you know, if you're going to give me this Rain Man kind of savant characteristic that I'm supposed to buy into, explain it a little bit to me. Explain where it came from. The backstory I want to know a little bit more about, because otherwise I'm just gonna be like, oh, this guy just has superpowers. Like, what?
Yeah, because like even because Worm, he played as much cards as he does and all that stuff, but you know why Worm's good at cards. Worm's good at cards because he cheats like crazy.
Yeah.
And
that's actually why I ended up liking Ed Norton's character a little bit more. Is not only is this kind of like we were saying with Kevin Spacey, where Ed Norton is one of those people that he picks himself and then goes 1 degree or 2 degrees to the left in order to find his, tone and character. This character is actually kind of different from a lot of Ed Norton I've seen. He's obviously played very interesting roles like American History X.
Which actually he, in the beginning of the movie when he has that goatee, that's from filming American History X, because he filmed this movie I think like a month after they wrapped American History X or something like that.
No kidding.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I guess American History X 1998, and same year. That, it's kind of interesting because I was sitting there wondering when he gets out of prison, there's a short shot where he's like shaving off this 70s style handlebar, almost Fu Manchu mustache, and part of me is thinking, okay, you had access to a razor in prison, so you could style your mustache like that because that's on a natural look. And
that doesn't just grow.
Yeah, you shave it off now. I mean, I get it. It's supposed to represent a new start, but I mean that's beside the point. His demeanor, his cadence. I mean, he was so fluid in playing the character. I really thought it was an interesting supporting character piece for him. And
it's also interesting because, like, I know we say interesting a lot, but like I think Ed Norton and Matt Damon play so well off each other.
Oh yeah.
I'm surprised they haven't been in like more movies together as like, lead A and B. Like I think they should do more movies together based off this. Like they had great chemistry together.
That's true, because Ed Norton has really good comedic chops, and so does Matt Damon when he applies them. And while Matt Damon obviously has gone towards like the thriller, more serious route now with a lot of movies he plays, I can't think of any comedies he's done in the past few years. While Ed Norton, he makes an appearance in a comedy every now and again. A lot of what's his name?
Wes Anderson.
Yeah, Wes Anderson films where he ends up playing like a really light, funny, comedic character. But I really agree with you in that they should pair up more often. I mean, you can't get much better than the chemistry they have in this movie. And even though there's a montage in the movie, obviously, where they go out and try and make 10 G's for Worm's debts that he owes to the Russian mob. That's kind of like we said, the running conflict in most of the movie on that storyline is that he owes money to this mobster, Grandma, which is, not the best.
Yeah. not the best nickname.
But certainly kind of a convincing mobster played by Michael Rispoli. And through that montage, Worm is just kind of like in the background at most of the poker games, doing random things. Like at one point, he's just putting into a shot glass at one of the poker halls they're at.
Yeah.
And part of me is sitting there going, it's like, well, that's kind of a weird detail. But then another part of me, like after watching Edward Norton's character, is going like, I love this guy. Like he's just funny.
Yeah. It's also like, did you think that was, because I get why like Edward Norton is not allowed to be at the table with Matt Damon, because like we see later in the movie, he's more of a liability, because if he ever gets caught, then he gets then they get the shit kicked out of him.
Yeah.
But like, wouldn't it have made sense if like Mike comes in at 10, he gambles until like noon or whatever, and Worm could come in to like either a different gambling hall or just come in and sit at another table and work, which that would have like made more sense, because they've been able to double their money without having to cut into each other's profit.
Yeah, I think there's an element of Ed Norton's character Worm I think he's almost using Matt Damon's character. Like, I mean, think of the character. He's a trickster. He's kind of
he is
slimy.
definitely using Matt Damon's character. 110% he's using him.
And that's kind of what I think is going on. Is that's the reason that he just leaves it up to him. Is that he doesn't. Part of him knows that he won't be able to do it because he'll get into trouble. Part of him knows that Mike is better at it than him. So why not just let him do it while I sit back and watch?
Okay.
Because that's the other thing is that Matt Damon ends up coming out of all that effort with more money than they needed for the debts. And that culminates in this kind of, after the whole, I'm going to give this up to get back to my girlfriend. You've led me along for all these debts. When is it going to stop? Worm. The movie culminates and he goes back to the sleazy Russian poker hall to finally get back at John Malkovich's character to beat him in a poker
win
game.
Enough money to pay off all the debts and make a profit against Teddy KGB.
Yeah.
The living Oreo commercial.
No kidding. And that'll actually come into play because, and this is okay, going back to this whole thing where I think we're going to touch on is that neither of these movies kind of had like a specific antagonist, even though they had plenty of opportunities to.
I think in Rounders, like, Worm's the antagonist.
Kind of, but he's also sort of in writing terms, he's this supporting character where he's one side of the argument. Gretchen Mole is one side where it's like, you need to stay clean. You need to, do something that you can stay safe and low risk. And Worm is like the high risk, but follow your calling kind of character.
Mm-hmm.
And they both kind of embody this sort of hyper real version of each of those arguments. Gretchen's very mousy. She's very reserved. She's safe. Whereas Worm is the trickster.
Edward Norton is the exact opposite of those.
Yeah, he's a trickster, and he's so skilled at being a trickster that it gets away from him. And that's what Matt Damon's problem is does he stay safe and go with the lawyer route, or does he follow his calling at the risk of it getting away from him again? And that's again why this story is actually pretty good, but the bottom line being that there ends up being a lot of this sort of like long curve away from the point in following Edward Norton's storyline. And there's a lot of like B characters with John Turturro or Petra, the Russian bartender.
Did you think like Mike and Petra were gonna like get together at the end of the movie?
I thought it was a mistake that he didn't, but
right? Because I'm just saying, because she seems like the perfect kind of like girlfriend for him, or romantic interest if he's gonna go back into the life, because everything we see from her is that she's super supportive of what he's doing. She understands what he's doing. She doesn't really like care that much. She seems to like legitimately like him as a person.
Yeah, I think it goes back to that fundamentals of the writing in the movie, in that Joe still represents the safe side, whereas Petra represents him fully accepting like this, I'm going to go into the dark world of poker kind of persona that he at the point where they almost get together, he feels really guilty about. And there's kind of I get why at the end of the day, you're still conflicted about whether or not you're going to mess up. It's a crisis of confidence. But then it's like, I think there's kind of two stories going on in that, where it's like the crisis of confidence is also manifesting in he has to get grandma off Worm's back in order to pay the debts, but also grandma is working with KGB and he wants to go after KGB, but KGB is like in 5% of the movie. He's at literally the beginning and then the end.
Yeah, which is kind of weird, right? Because Graham is supposed to be like is kind of the bad guy, but he's not really the bad guy. Teddy KGB is supposed to be really the bad guy, but he's he's in the first 5 minutes and the last 10 minutes.
I think what I recognize most is that they used this sort of John Truby does this a lot, where he describes sort of a character tree in which every character that extends out from the main character represents something different in the story. Grandma being this sort of like the physical truth of the conflict in the movie, and KGB represents that sort of more psychological truth. But I think that's what was missing, is I wanted to see KGB rub that into Matt Damon's character more, where at the end it just kind of seems like he's willing to let go this loss, but I really wanted to see him get like bitter and vindictive over the idea of Matt Damon trying to come and win a poker game against him.
So at the end, when Matt Damon whoops his ass and wins like 60 grand off him, you don't think when he freaks out and starts yelling and throwing chips around, that's not him being vindictive. He's throwing his Oreos around.
Yeah,
nah, that guy.
That's the spoiler, is that the tell at the end of the movie, it's interesting. I actually really liked this. In the opening scene, the problem with the poker game is that he misreads the counting with the card game. So it's a technical reason that he lost. Yeah. And the solution at the end of the movie is different. And this is, I think, the best way writers can always do it, is you have to make the ending different from the beginning flaw, in that he doesn't use his technical skills to beat him. He uses a tell, and it's really specific. And I love the specificity of KGB, like licks or eats a certain Oreo cookie when he splits them apart, and that's when you can tell he's bluffing or not.
Yeah, when he sits there and it looks like he's like thinking or whatever, and he like he's eating Oreos, which is like a really weird like product placement thing, but I love it. This is a great Oreos commercial where he's eating these like Oreos, and Matt Damon finally realizes like, wait, he only eats it like that when he's holding. Total bullshit.
Yeah. But that's kind of, I mean, even if it isn't, I don't know if it is product placement, because you never see like an Oreos box or anything.
We all know those are Oreos.
Yeah, they're lined up in like a poker chip holding tray. But I think any writer can take that sort of advice to the bank, in that make your character super specific, because how specific is it for a guy to, when he's playing poker, have a tray of Oreos next to him that he eats, and that's his tell? I mean, that you can't get better than thinking up an idea like that, because it makes the ending that much more like, it like lit a fire in my brain, probably like the main character. And I love when writers can put you into the shoes of the main character like that, where it's like, oh shit, he's got him.
Oh, that was like one of the best like hell yeah moments for the movie, was when he saw that. I'm like, oh, he caught Teddy KGB in his own game, and he's about to just lean on him.
Yeah,
like, no, that was good stuff.
Yeah, and that's a little bit of the ending is in the beginning, because it's exactly that scene where he's with all of his professors and he gets everybody because of their tells.
Yeah,
but nonetheless, to answer the question that you had earlier, is that I think the reason I want more is that KGB does have the opportunity to let Grandma beat the shit out of Mike, but he just kind of is like, no, he won fair and square, and then he's just
give him his money.
It.
Like, honestly, I kind of like that though. It's like honor among thieves kind of thing, or kind of deal, where he's like, I don't know. I think that's a thing where the villains in this movie are still kind of real, because I think if it was like, I don't know, I think if it was more leaned into like the idea of like a gambling crime movie kind of thing, like Mike be dead in a ditch or something like that, or this would have begun with Mike getting the shit kicked out of him and thrown off a 4-story like building.
Oh hell yeah!
And then the rest of the movie would have been his revenge story.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's kind of the thing that is interesting too. That's that they choose the Russian mafia in late 90s New York City, who I'm sure at that point had more than one arm and one, I don't know if you could call him a boss per se, but he's kind of a head honcho running this poker tournament inside of a basement. But it was kind of,
I don't even know if he was like a boss or anything. I think he was just like one of those like made dudes that just they had him run the
Yeah.
poker scene.
I mean, that's true. I don't really know the structure of the Russian mob, I guess, and I'm glad I don't. I don't want to be familiar, but
But yeah, like I don't know, the Russian mob just is also it's an interesting choice. The Russian mob. Usually you would see like the Italian mafia in this
well, I guess
kind
like
of role.
late '90s New York, the Italian mafia was probably on its way out after all of like the trials and stuff. But it is still a pretty small time game when you think about it. I mean, it's just underground poker. There's not necessarily a whole lot of like elite, like super illegal things going on. It's just illegal poker games. That's all it is.
Yeah, it's like gaming and like stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like they're granted, like don't get me wrong, these guys are probably making like a bunch of money
Oh yeah.
to like doing this because what is it? Mike comes in and he loses 30 grand like when he in the beginning of the movie, and then he comes in at the last half of the movie with like 10 G's, and it seems like that's the amount of money people come into this like poker hall with. It's like thousands upon thousands of dollars, and I'm like, that's kind of, you know, they're these Russian mafia guys are probably making a lot of money.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why Teddy KGB is like, okay, I lost like 40 grand to you. It hurts my pride, but I'm not gonna like lose any sleep over it.
Well, speaking of losing sleep, I've been losing sleep over thinking about trying to think of deleted scenes for this movie because I kind of came up short. But I'm thinking, for me, that my deleted scene would be I want to see Teddy KGB in the Vaughn's supermarket in New York City searching for packages on packages of Oreos.
Oh, he just because that guy buys in bulk Oreos, right?
Yeah. If there's a Costco in New York City or around the area, he definitely has a card, and he's definitely buying bulk packs of Oreos.
Could you imagine? He's like the super like lame looking dad that like walks around. He's wearing like the sweater vest and like the khakis, and he's just buying like bunches and bunches of Oreos. And he's just like, "Oh hey Margaret, how you do?" And fucking they're like, "Oh hey Teddy, getting Oreos for the kids?" He's like, "Yeah, for kids. Yes, this is where I'm getting all these Oreos for."
Yeah.
Also, you might be thinking that was a really bad Russian accent. That's the Russian accent Malkovich goes for in this movie.
I was just going to bring up the point that Malkovich, you think Malkovich has some sort of recognizing like what I don't want to say a good Russian accent because, listen, I'm no expert on Russian accents, but it's a very specific accent he uses in this movie. It's very staccato. It's very...
He sounds like a Looney Tunes character.
It's kind of caricaturish. It's I don't know. It's interesting. But that's Rounders. I think we're gonna get into 21 next, right after this break. Hey Dean, did you hear about my new podcast?
Nah, fool, what is it?
I started a podcast where I review different colors of custom paint and how fast they dry.
Well, that's cool, but
Are you gonna tune in?
I'll let you know what I think, but you should probably find something that doesn't suck and use Anchor.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free.
I like free.
It's a super easy way to record, edit, and distribute your podcast to platforms like Spotify and Apple Music, all without having to overcomplicate the process. You can even make money with no minimum listenership.
I like money.
And you'll make plenty of money if you have a better idea for a podcast. You have an idea for a podcast that's more exciting than watching paint dry? Then you should head over to Anchor.
Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Okay, and welcome back. We're going to get into 21 now from 2008.
This is going to be interesting.
Yeah, 10 years later. Main character played by Jim Sturgis, named Ben Campbell. I can't think of any other movies that Jim Sturgis has been in, despite the fact that, well,
he was in Across the Universe.
Yeah, I just looked it up now, Across the Universe. But I think that's the thing about his character. His character, the first thing I'll say about this movie is that he feels like somebody that they cast to be kind of transparent in the character, right?
Yeah.
he does totally seem like they didn't mean to cast him. Like they probably meant to go get somebody like
Not to be insulting, but a little bit more famous.
yeah, like his character sounded like Tobey Maguire a little bit. And I was like, did they mean to go get him, but he was like too old at this point? Like, what was the deal?
Maybe, because this is kind of weird, but so Jim Sturgis, he's from like England, right? Like I think he's from like around London or something like that, or
You might know,
but he's
better, yeah.
English. So when he talks in this movie, I don't know about you, but I know how last week or the week before you were talking about how you can tell Liam Neeson was Irish in Darkman, and I just couldn't hear the accent. I just couldn't hear it. In this movie, I can tell that guy's not American.
Yeah.
When he talks.
The Boston accent, it's kind of like
non-existent.
It's just like it's not consistent, and it comes up in places where more when it starts to get intense, it starts to come up, but then like nobody else here who lives in Boston that he comes in contact with has a Boston accent besides his mom, and I'm like, okay.
Did all you guys just like transfer in?
Yeah, and that's not to say that Bostonians need to have a Boston accent. I mean, you can just park the car, but
no, you gotta park the car.
Yeah,
you gotta park the car and go around at the shop, man.
But yeah, I kind of feel like for some reason the other person I would have expected to be in this is Jesse Eisenberg, but
I don't know if he was big yet. This was 08?
Yeah, this was 2 years before The Social Network.
I think before that he was doing like comedies.
Yeah, because
I remember him in 30 Minutes or Less, which I think came out before Social Network.
Let's see. I got Zombieland was 2009, and that was kind of like his big.
Yeah, that was the breakout.
Adventureland was also 2009, which make different titles.
Yeah.
No, 30 Minutes or Less was 2011. Interesting choice to do after The Social Network, but
good on him. It shows range, man. Range. That's what he's looking for.
So. I know we're getting off topic with talking about Jesse Eisenberg, but does Jesse Eisenberg actually have range?
Okay, I think he does. Okay. Jesse Eisenberg plays Jesse Eisenberg, but he either plays like funny on the weekend Jesse Eisenberg or I'm really mad because I missed the bus Jesse Eisenberg.
That's actually a really good description. But it's kind of adding to the argument we've been saying about how people just kind of pick themselves and play to the right or the left. I mean, when you think about what Jesse Eisenberg has done, he did 30 Minutes or Less. Same year he did Rio, which was a huge hit for DreamWorks at the time. He's in Now You See. I think that's why I thought he would be in this movie, is because Now You See Me was the movie he was in, and that's like kind of the same character.
Which I think is interesting because, like, does Jim Sturgis do a bad job in this movie?
No,
like, is he like?
I wouldn't say so.
Yeah, I wouldn't say so either. But you're watching the movie and you're just like, there's nothing that he does with a character that makes me think, okay, this is why they casted you. I can't, like, there's nothing really there that makes me like, okay, you were the first choice for this movie kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because
more to the point, it's like when he starts to get, in the beginning, I totally believe his character because he's very nerdy and shy, but when he starts to get confident and angry towards the middle to the end of the movie, I just don't believe it.
That's a thing I had had kind of an issue with the movie is, so the first half of the movie we find out about, our main character, Ben Campbell. He's like he's basically a genius. He has a 4.0 GPA from Harvard. He's doing this like robotics programming thing.
The 209.
The 209. He's doing the 209 programming robotics thing for fun, which they eventually win. And he's like, for the most, like, he's a good looking guy. He's the only real flaw he has is that he's just kind of shy. Right?
Yeah, which, I'll give him that they make it part of the story and that he's supposed to be breaking out of his character by.
But that's the thing. Like, at the beginning of the movie, he's basically perfect.
Yeah.
Like if like he's the kind of guy where if you were a girl and you had like conservative parents, you would look for this guy to be like the poster child for this is the guy I can bring home to my parents.
Yeah.
Like he is that dude.
It's kind of a gray area where like the flaw of the movie is connected to something that wouldn't be a flaw, because obviously the flaw being he's shy and is inexperienced in life is the reason that he's not going to get this scholarship that he needs to get into Harvard, but he needs the money. So I don't know. I kind of feel like it was fabricated so that they could get somebody in the main character of the story to need money so that they needed to join this card counting group. Because really, when you think about it, there's only two reasons that you would join a secret card counting group at school that goes to Vegas every weekend and wins mounds and mounds of money. Is you're greedy or you need money. And
Yeah.
I think,
And they didn't want him to be greedy.
so I almost think that could be a more interesting starting flaw, because that becomes like the flaw that is kind of a common thread, is that the characters that get kicked off the team or lose the team a lot of money are cocky, but it's not quite greed.
Yeah. They just think that they can't lose kind of thing, and that's what their downfall is.
Yeah. But I think there could have been an interesting point to be made, and like it costs $300,000 to go to Harvard. So why am I wrong for trying to earn that money by cheating my way through the system? Because it's almost criminal what these people charge to go to Harvard. But in reality, no, it isn't. It's Harvard. But
yeah. Well, okay, here's the other thing. So, because he's already at MIT.
oh yeah,
Like he's getting his bachelor's at MIT. Like he had to pay for that somehow.
MIT's my transfer school. It's like, oh, whoop-de-doo.
Could you imagine you read that on a resume? You're like, you're from Harvard Medical School. It's like, oh yeah, I transferred out of MIT, after I won the 209, robotics project. And they're just like,
and not only did I transfer from an engineering robotics major, because I don't know what he's doing at MIT.
yeah.
But then I went to Harvard Medical School, so I'm fluently proficient in two areas of genius. It's like, okay, dude.
Yeah, like, because that's the thing. Like the whole that's the one thing I had that's like, I know it's not really an issue, but I like it. He doesn't seem to have like a real flaw until like kind of halfway through the movie.
Yeah,
because he's basically perfect.
It's definitely developed, and it's one of the reasons that's part of the reason that the movie like for me, this movie feels pretty fabricated because of it. Which
is weird,
but it still feels you never get engaged with the movie because the whole time you feel like it's a created situation. Rather with Rounders, I buy in from the beginning because of these stakes in the movie. Is from the get-go there's not like huge stakes, because the stakes should be like I lost something and I need to get it back, or I'm at risk of losing everything, not I'm at risk of losing going to Harvard. It's not a huge
after going to MIT.
Yeah, it's not a hugely relatable, and I'm not to say that characters have to be relatable per se, but the fact that then there's not a whole lot of interest outside of the character is challenging. I mean, I don't think they meant this to be any sort of like brain teaser movie, but it's an interesting note at the beginning.
Well, here's the thing, because you said it's like, oh, this movie feels like kind of fabricated, whereas Rounders feels a lot more real. So, 21's based on a true story,
which is interesting. That I didn't know that, but
yeah, it's actually based on this card counting group from MIT, which is a real thing, and they would go to Vegas, and it was from like 90, or it was from like 77 to like 97 or something like that. Like it went on for a long time.
So then there's a question I have from the get-go, because like we talked about how the conflict is a little bit all over the place in Rounders. The conflict is kind of, the stakes are only in the fact that they might get caught counting cards, which they make a note. It apparently isn't illegal, although you obviously can get in trouble for it in Vegas. But the worst you're going to get is banned from a casino.
Yeah, like that's actually a thing. So in casinos, for those who go to casinos, it is not against the rules to count cards as long as it is strictly one person doing it and it is in your head. You can't write anything down at a table. You can't keep notes. You can't take pictures. If you are sitting at a table, hands up, no weird whatever, you can count cards. No, you can't get in trouble. It's hella difficult because there's 7 decks in a shoe usually when you're doing 21.
Yeah.
So it's not keeping track of a single deck. You can keep track of a single deck, no problem. I could do that. I ain't a fucking genius. But 7 decks, you need to have a damn good memory and really good like reading and retention to do that.
Yeah.
Which is the illegal part that they're coming in, because somebody sits at the table for like an hour to get the count of like 3 or 4 decks so they can read the other 3 or 4 decks in the shoe.
Yeah.
And then they're giving it. That's where the illegal part comes in.
So that's actually an interesting piece of inside baseball, is because for me, first of all, thinking about there was a moment where who kind of becomes one of the main antagonists, Lawrence Fishburne's character mentions, "Don't count cards in my casino. You can go do that in
Atlantic City.
Why didn't they go to Atlantic City? That's much closer than Vegas.
I know, they could have driven there.
Yeah, I mean, Matt Damon's character goes to Atlantic City.
Which reminds me, there's a presidential property cameo in The Rounders where he goes to Trump's Taj Mahal Casino
in Atlantic City, which I've heard is not great. But we won't get into that.
It's a pretty low rent casino now. I mean, in 98 it was probably like really good, but I don't think it's been updated since 98.
That was like the height of Trump's Playboy status. I remember that everybody thought he was the billionaire economics man back then, basically Mr. Monopoly. But beside the point is another thing I was thinking about when thinking of the whole, is counting cards legal or just wrong, is I remember a while ago I heard this story about a guy who, I guess in slot machines, there's what basically happens is the computer, when you pull the arm, just like how there's odds in counting cards, though they're not physical, the computer has like digitally, nowadays anyways, digitally computed odds that it rolls out the results for. And he found this glitch in a specific slot machine that made it so that if you did a certain sequence or something, or
it would always pay out.
It would always pay out jackpots. And he was able to make like lots of money, just the 3-guy operation, going around and doing the glitch, which normally people like search for and they get paid out by companies in order to report, but he used it in order to exploit the system. And there was a court case in which the casino was trying to sue him to get all the winnings back because he cheated. But it's technically not illegal to cheat at gambling because there's a set number of odds that a player can play within, and that's the point of why it's legal in certain places to gamble, is that there's still odds, that it's not just the casinos are rigging the odds to cheat against you, so that technically he was still playing within determined odds,
the confines of the game.
Yeah, and in that it was the machine's setup should have been configured so that couldn't happen, but because it could happen, it was within the confines of a legal game of slot. And that's kind of, I think, what they do in this movie, is that they use counting cards in that way, but it's frowned upon by the casinos because it loses them mounds of money, even though it's like, I feel like hundreds of thousands of dollars is nothing to a casino.
You'd be surprised. My buddy works in a casino. He's not a dealer, he's a banker, so he sits next to people at like backgammon tables.
Yeah,
and he's just in front of like, I don't know, like 10 grand worth of cash at any one time, and he like gives people their chips and they give him cash. So he has like 10 grand on him like at any one time to go into the bank and make change and all that stuff. But like, for those things, he's been in rooms where people will play $500,000 hands of like hold'em or poker or whatever. Like he's been in those rooms, but like these casinos, yeah, some casinos you could go in and you could, win a lot of money, but they saying like the casinos don't care. Nah, they care. They care whenever anybody walks out with more than like $100,000. If it's over $100,000, then there's taxes involved, and they get really pissy about it.
Yeah, because I can also understand the point that it's not just about the principle of you've won a bunch of money from us, but then you've also exposed a way to basically drain money out of our casino, because that is a casino's business model, is they risk huge losses on people winning, and that's why you're only supposed to win a certain amount so that they could bring in more money, because suckers can then come in and lose all their money for them to then pay out to the jackpots, which is basically, when you think about it, a jackpot is just a fancy advertising method,
Yeah.
But beside the point is like this is kind of where I think it all starts to fall apart as far as the conflict in the movie, right? So Lawrence Fishburne's character is this pit boss kind of, he keeps an eye on the cameras in order to catch anybody who's cheating in the casino, and he is one of the last sort of like physical actual employed pit bosses in Vegas, because there's this like facial recognition technology that all the casinos are adopting, and Planet Hollywood is the only one left that hasn't adopted it yet, even though they're thinking about it.
Yeah, which is kind of weird because this movie takes place in like 2008, right?
Yeah.
And they're talking about like, oh, it's going to have this facial recognition software in this database that's able to capture all the card counters and everyone in the casino. So like you will never need a pit boss or an eye in the sky to watch everybody in the casino to find cheaters. And I'm like, bruh, I don't think we have that shit now.
Yeah,
At least I don't think so.
So this is kind of if we're looking to get specific about it, like the facial recognition, quote unquote, technology is that it takes a picture of people's faces and then recognizes them in the pictures, which is really what like reCAPTCHA does. It just recognizes images and then like, so I believe that part, but calling it facial recognition is kind of a stretch, because I mean, not to, again, be a little too political, but I remember when all the Hong Kong riots were going on, people were like collapsing these towers that had these light poles that had facial recognition cameras on them. And I don't know the specifics on it. That's just what I heard reported. But like, if that's what's going on in 2020 after like a jump in technology from, I mean, no offense, but 12 years ago in 2008, technology was like primitive compared to what we have right now.
Oh yeah, dude! Like YouTube just got big in 2008.
Cell phones still had physical keyboards that you had to flip from under the phone.
I remember when like do you remember like the Razor, where it was like this really thin like flip phone that came out and it had the slide out keyboard?
Oh yeah,
that was the shit in 2008.
Or just like the Razor flip phone itself was like the sleekest, like
cleanest kind of thing
you could have in the 8th grade. And
oh man,
but that was also like iPhone 1 had been out, or I think that was 2008 had to have been iPhone 2, right?
Oh, something like that. Well, here's another thing, because I have a list of the top grossing movies of 2008 and 2009 for our little game. I have a thing, but I will let you know that in 2008, that's when the Marvel Cinematic Universe started.
Yeah, with Iron Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look,
I remember.
You got to think about it. That was like how long ago? That was 2008.
Yeah.
Was when that happened, and that's like 12 years ago. That's insane.
Yeah.
But there ain't no way there's facial rec in 2008. At least like the kind they're talking about.
I mean, if we're talking about the movies from 2008, it's hard to believe that a man could build an iron suit with weaponry and jet propelled.
Well, yeah, but that's Robert Downey Jr. That wasn't Tony Stark. Robert Downey Jr. did that. That was a documentary.
Yeah, that's true. So the
names were changed to protect the innocent.
Yeah, the point being is that there's this whole, that's kind of like the ticking clock in the movie, right? Is that they have to get a winnings from this specific casino that doesn't have the technology yet before it adopts it. And Lawrence Fishburne's character is like the last guy who also doesn't want the casino to adopt, but that kind of breaks the stakes in that okay, no offense, but if these guys don't want the technology, and Lawrence Fishburne doesn't want the technology, but he's also trying to catch these guys so that they don't get the technology, how come that the gamblers aren't working with Fishburne to like stage some sort of like, oh, we caught these guys, it still works to just have people in here?
That would have been insane if like they got a hold of him and was like, hey, dude, we're these really good card counters and we could keep you in a job as long as you just don't beat the shit out of us every week and let us keep some of the money.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point that actually comes up later in the film, is that the Ben Campbell works with Cole Williams, Lawrence Fishburne's character, to catch Kevin Spacey's character in this like double cross, catch me if you can kind of.
This double cross 3D chess, like,
yeah,
espionage crime heist thing.
Yeah, because that's the other thing, is the movie has a lot of heist elements to it, and they're supposed to go on one big last job after Ben ruins everything for the team. They're gonna get one last payout in order to just like, we're gonna walk away with the money after this. And at first, Kevin Spacey's character looks to double cross them, but then it's figured out that Lawrence Fishburne and Jim Sturgis are in bed together secretly, and they've tricked Kevin Spacey into giving him these chocolate coins that Choi, the token Asian character in the movie.
Which, another point, so I told you how this movie was based on like a true story. All the characters are supposed to be Asian, if based on the true story.
But you can't have that in Hollywood 2008.
Couldn't happen.
I mean,
but yeah,
I don't know.
Also, can I make a point to like this? It's not related to like the whole Asian thing, but so Choi, I got a kind of an issue with Choi and like the whole like premise of how they're doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So they come in and they have to all be in disguises, right? So they don't get caught and they can keep going to all these different casinos and do all this gambling stuff. I'm just saying, all of their disguises are shit.
They do look exactly like themselves. I mean,
Choi literally doesn't even comb his hair differently.
Yeah, or like the other character, the other girl, I can't remember her name. Let's see. It is. I know
who you're talking about. Yeah.
She basically dresses the same kind of. She never does her hair different. It's always like the dress, and like here's the other thing too.
Or she'll do like an accent or something.
Yeah, like Kate Bosworth's character Jill at least comes up with accents and different disguises, and
she does her hair differently. She wears a different dress. She does her makeup different.
Yeah, definitely does a better job at calling attention to her character outside of what they're doing. I mean, like, and like the other thing that
Ben just shows up in a suit. That's literally his disguise, is he wears a suit.
Yeah, or here's another thing that they actually catch later in the movie and mention. The whole thing that they're supposed to do when they get to the table is order the tonic and soda or whatever it is.
Yeah, or a tonic with lime.
Yeah, and that's supposed to show, quote unquote, that they're drinking. Dude, well, that's something they recognize later, that Lawrence Fishburne's character recognizes, that they all order a tonic with lime. But it's like, how come you can't just like get a beer or like an apple teeny or something? Like, how change it up, dude.
They don't want him to be getting toasted and losing the count. That's why. Which is another thing. Like, that's another like weird thing about this movie. It's like when the person is sitting next to so you have a spotter and you have the counter, right?
Yeah.
So so Jill sits down at the table, she counts the cards, and then Ben shows up and they give them the secret signal as, this is what the count is. Now you can start winning. You can start making all the money. And I'm like, why the hell does Jill need to stay at that table after that? That just screams of, hey, you're about to get caught, because now the two of us are there. And also she's losing money to him. I
mean,
essentially.
I think that's the point, is like because they never really specifically describe the system. I kind of feel like the money that she's losing to him is just seed money. And that most of the money ends up, because it's blackjack. When you win against the dealer, that's where the money comes from. It doesn't come from necessarily the other people on the table. And I kind of feel like it's almost more suspicious for them to like get up and walk away from the table once they signal this person and they come to the table. I think it's one of those things where either way it's kind of doomed from the beginning if you get caught. On top of the fact that I love so they give these like signals that when the table's hot, they reach around their back to like stretch, which is super obvious because you're looking back at the person when you're stretching.
Oh god, Jill literally like turns around and like holds her arms behind her and makes a big old X. Like she doesn't even like looks like she's stretching. Yeah. She like crosses her arm in a big X and she looks and she just like makes deep eye contact with Ben every time. And I'm like, lady, if you did that in real life, you would be the one getting your hand broken with a hammer, not Ben.
Yeah, because the dealer's definitely gonna notice that. And on top of the fact that my thinking is like, okay, if you want to signal the guy coming from the table, why not even looking at them, or I guess you kind of have to see if they're coming. Look around like you're looking for the waitress and be like, I want another drink, and hold up your drink to signal that the table's hot, because that not only looks like you're looking around for the waitress, but then you're also looking like the table is hot because you're getting into it, you're having fun, you want another drink, let's keep this rolling. It kind of plays into the character.
Yeah, like because they have like a couple of like quote unquote signals that they're using where it's like, oh, we run a hand through our hair, or when we scratch our eye or whatever. There's like really specific like ticks or whatever that it's like, oh yeah, these are the things you need to watch out for. But it's also like, look, if you're gonna like, what if you just need to scratch your eye?
Yeah.
Or like, what if you're just like trying to get your hair out of your face? Like, there's some of these ticks where it's just like, yeah, those are really good signs because they're super subtle and like they're not going to be very noticeable. Yeah. But they're also the kind of really small and subtle ones that you're probably just going to do without thinking.
Yeah, like you just be like, I need to go for a cigarette real quick, and then just, or the running the hand through the hair thing really gets me because it's like, okay, somebody is coming, like we're in. We
got to get the hell out of here.
Really slow hand to the hair. Let's get out of here instead of grab the chips and run. And that's the very obvious signal that we're in trouble. It's like, I don't know.
Like that's another thing, because it's like when they need to leave in the movie. So it's not like, oh, I think the dealer's onto us. Let's get out of here. Like that's like, I think what they meant for that signal, where it's like, hey, I think the dealer's catching on to what we're doing. We should probably get out of here. Yeah. But whenever they do it in the movie, it's like, oh, the pit boss and like 6, gorillas are coming out with the Winstons, and they're about to, beat the shit out of us. That the signal for that should be, yo, grab the shit, let's get the fuck out of here. Yeah. Like there shouldn't be a subtle signal. It should be you open your shirt and you just pour chips in the table into your shirt and you book it. Like you were looking to get off the property ASAP.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think it is interesting because at the end of the day, thinking about this movie, go back to like the director, Robert Luketic. Yeah. This guy also famously did Legally Blonde. And
a classic of American cinema.
Yeah, classic of American cinema. Very charismatic main character. Very straightforward.
Wow, that Legally Blonde was his first movie.
Yeah, and it's interesting how you can make like an instant classic first time around, but then like turn around and this movie has just, I don't want to like criticize it too much and say it has holes in it, but it's just kind of like a little flat in its ability to really get you into it, aside from the subject matter. Because here's another thing is I would almost be more interested in following Kate Bosworth's character around because she has more charisma. She has, I don't want to just like diss Ben Sturgis and say, or Jim Sturgis and say that she has more acting chops, but it's like I was more interested in her character throughout the movie.
That, and she actually has like a backstory with it that seems a little more interesting.
Where like
her dad was a card counter or a gambler.
Yeah, and that's how she gets into it. But then like Ben Campbell's dad is just kind of gone. I couldn't really tell if he was dead or like left the picture or whatever.
I couldn't figure that out either.
Yeah,
because like they talk about it as like, oh, your dad left, and how do you feel about that? He'd be really, I'm sorry. But then like his mom still talks about him in kind of like a nice, loving way. So I'm like, did he just die? And I mean, like, did he like just die like 10 minutes before the movie started, or did he like walk out when Ben was like 5 and he died later, or what? Because it's really vague.
The cut doesn't seem that deep. It doesn't seem very raw. I assume it was like long ago when he was a kid or something. Which is an interesting point again. You have a single mom who's a working mom. She's older and she's working. How come you can't make that one of the part of the stakes of the movie where you're using?
Well, she's not only working, but she gives him like $60,000. Yeah. She cuts him a check and is like, hey, I've been working to get you, here's $60,000 in a check. And, you can use this to help you get to Harvard Medical School. But I'm also looking, I'm like, she doesn't live in like a rundown apartment. She lives in like a nicer like apartment or house or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's like
it's Boston in Boston.
Boston suburbs are like traditionally for Boston natives not great. I mean, if we're calling back to Good Will Hunting, even though it was 10 years prior, there's definitely like, poverty in Boston at that point. But I don't know. It's just one of those things where I really wish they could have worked that in somehow, because they try to make this like mother-son connection at the beginning of the movie too that, again, doesn't make an appearance again until she cuts him a check. There's just a lot of things that are like brought up and then forgotten for convenience.
Also, I do want to make this point because, again, this is 2008. How much was minimum wage in 2008?
Oh yeah, because of the whole $8 thing. That caught me way off guard too, because I think about like my first job had to have been 2000. The beginning of 2014, and
yeah,
I was earning, I can't remember if it was $10 or $11 an hour, but like at that point, it's like, I don't know. I feel like there would have been more.
Because, okay, let's give context to people so they know why we're bringing this up. So early on in the movie, Ben is working at this really ritzy, like suit.
It's like a suit and haberdashery.
Yeah, like haberdashery. Like it is that upscale. All right, it's the suit and haberdashery place.
I mean, later in the movie, there's literally a suit that he tries to sell for like $1,000.
Yeah, that's with discounts. It's like $1,000.
It's not Men's Warehouse.
Yeah, this is a classy joint. So he's working there and he gets a promotion. And he's like, oh, you're going to be the new assistant manager of this men's suit and haberdashery in Boston, all right, where we sell $1,000 suits. And that means you're going to get a pay bump. It's not like minimum wage. It's a pay bump to $8 an hour. Homie, you couldn't pay me to answer phones for $8 an hour in 2020.
Yeah.
Like I can get more flipping burgers at McDonald's for them working $8 an hour.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing because it's like we are 12 years removed from that point in time, and it's odd to think about the fact that the mid-aughts were like that long ago, and that inflation and things like that play a role in it, because at that point too, they're talking about winning $200,000, $300,000 a night at or per job at Vegas, and it's like, imagine what that money's worth today. I mean,
right.
On top of the fact, imagine what thinking about what tuition at Harvard is today. I mean, that puts it at near $500,000 if you really.
A semester is like $50,000.
Yeah,
at Harvard.
On top of the fact that not only factoring in inflation, but think about how much tuition's gone up in the past few years.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Tuition for Harvard now, it's like $50,000. From what I've heard, it's like $50,000 a semester So it's not a whole year. So it's $100,000 a year. You're in
It's
Harvard for
also
4
Harvard
years. So
Med he's going to. So it's like
it's Harvard
postgraduate
Med. So
school.
it might be more.
Oh yeah.
Granted, I don't know if you can go to Harvard to get your like
So
AA. That'd be weird. That'd be a waste of money.
let's see. Here I have the cost of tuition to Harvard Medical School can vary based on chosen path, but on average, the tuition for 2019 to 2020 school year is $63,400.
Jesus.
The total cost of Harvard Medical School per year is $95,055.
So basically $100,000 a semester.
Yeah, and I guess when you're thinking about the fact that med school probably takes you after a bachelor, it's another 4 or 5 years to get through.
Yeah, with internships, and you have to be, all this others. Yeah, you have to do all your medical stuff. Yeah.
So that's pushing $500,000. I mean, it is so weird because 2008, I guess, like I was in middle school at the time, so that doesn't seem like that long ago, but it is that long ago. I don't know. It's weird. Getting old.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I mean, dude, I know. Like you say 2008, and I'm like, bro, I was a freshman in high school.
I don't know.
I feel old as shit. But yeah, like that is like the weird thing about that was like a weird like time lock about this movie. And I say time lock where it's like something happens in the movie and you're like, okay, this can only take place in this certain time. So whenever it says present day, I know it's not present day. And it wasn't like the fashion, it wasn't like anything they said, because like, not much fashionably has changed since 2008. But like when they said $8 an hour after, and that's like with a pay bump to a new promotion and position, I was like, okay, this movie had to have taken place like years ago.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know why that just bugged the shit out of me.
It was just surprising, jarring to think that, because also probably the cost of living in Boston, like Boston proper, where he's going to school, is
and MIT
cheap.
Where he can ride his bike to MIT.
Also, okay, we're looking this up now too, because I'm thinking about how much does it cost to go to MIT?
Oh yeah, because that's the thing. Because I don't know if he got a scholarship for MIT, because that's the big thing about the movie, is that he's trying to get a scholarship to go to Harvard Medical School. And that's why he kind of also does the 21 stuff, is because they say you need life experience to really,
like that's the crux of the movie.
Yeah. And he's just like, oh yeah, I can get life experience. And then he kind of ends up doing this. I'd say doing this, he's winning hundreds of thousands of dollars in Vegas counting cards.
Yeah.
But he's
still
going to MIT.
Yeah, MIT is here. It says for the 2018-19 school year, tuition and fees were $51,520 a year, whereas the price tag reaches $70,240 a year annually. So it's not a whole. I mean, it's a difference of $20,000 a year, but it's still a lot of money. I mean, you think that you can't get more scholar? I don't know. It's that, like I said, there's a lot of moving parts to this story that are just like, if you don't think about it, fine, it's not going to bother you. But when you start to think about it, it's like it's just a lot messed up with what's going on here.
Yeah, when you start looking at it, you're just like, it feels like they're using numbers from like the 90s, whenever the book was written that this is based off. Like they're still using the same numbers, but they just updated everything to being like 2008.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird.
I don't know. So I think that's actually something, there's a point you hit on to kind of wrap up what happens, because, he ends up getting the money, his friends win the 209, gets the girl, yada, yada, yada. The bookend of the movie is that he goes back to MIT or Harvard Med for the entrance interview, I suppose. And he's been telling this story the whole time to the admittance officer, and the officer's just kind of like looking at the final shot is his officer looking at him like dumbfounded that this kid did all this. But can I just point out that, okay, you're going to tell your medical school admittance officer that the life experience you got wasn't charitable, it wasn't volunteer work, it wasn't academic, it wasn't
like a life struggle where you had to like escape a country or whatever.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, you know, hardships you had to overcome.
It was that I broke bad and counted cards in order to afford coming to this school.
Broke bad to come to the school by betraying a professor that you probably have heard of at MIT and getting the shit kicked out of me by Morpheus in a back room at a casino in Vegas, and also plowing the shit out of the girl of my dreams.
Yeah,
like
I just feel
that, that's essentially his life experience is what he just told him.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken.
I lived a gambler's fantasy for, I don't know, like 6 months, and now I deserve to go to medical school here. And I feel like my deleted scene for this movie is actually, to segue perfectly into it, is that I want to see immediately after the cut to black him getting rejected from medical school because the guy's like, no, you're a criminal. It's like, it's insane what you did.
Or the fucking medical officer being like, bullshit, ain't no way that's true, get the hell out of here, you lying sack of shit.
Yeah, I just don't understand how anybody, like you said, could believe it, or if it's believable, wouldn't be concerned that you've made all your money through tax fraud and now you are trying to pay for medical school with it.
Well, I don't think it's tax fraud. Like, he made his money, quote unquote, legitimately. He made his money gambling, but like, he's like,
well, it's like,
yo, I have all this money, I can pay for the school now. Yeah, but I would really like this scholarship, and also I am very adept at counting cards. I will probably be in Atlantic City every weekend so I don't have to work at my Men's Warehouse job anymore.
Well, yeah, but then it's like, that's what Kevin Spacey's character gets in trouble for at the end of the movie, is tax evasion as a result of not reporting his gambling earnings. And it's like, kind of feel like you wouldn't do that either if you had cash in because he also stores the cash in the ceiling of his dorm room. But I'm sitting over here like, well, why not just, you don't need to clean that money, it was legitimate earnings, most likely under your actual identity, unless you like falsified identity or in order to cash the chips or whatever. I mean, I don't know, do you have to like give your ID over when you cash chips at a casino?
Well, okay, that's another thing. It's like, so when you win a certain amount of money, you have to like claim that, and it's not like, oh, you claim it when you get home, you claim it at the casino.
Definitely.
Like, you needed to give a social security number, you need to give like information, you need to give them an ID.
Yeah, that's
why it's like, because the fake IDs they're giving them, because they're just giving them like fake driver's license and saying, oh, if anybody asks any questions, just show them this, that way it's verified, all of you over 21, you can gamble here, no worries.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking like, but who's claiming this on their tax? Because they have to give them a social.
Yeah.
Because like my cousin he plays like poker tournaments around here in California, and he won like 20 grand in like a game of like I think it was like Hold'em or whatever, and he had to claim that on his taxes. Like they wouldn't let him claim the money until he like filled out paperwork.
Yeah,
and that was for like 20 grand. These guys are walking away with like $300,000 a weekend.
Yeah, and
so they have to claim it. They know, these casinos know who the fuck they are.
Yeah, or that's what I'm saying. I guess that's what I'm saying is like, there's still a lot of loose ends to think about at the end of all this. Like, I don't know. And that's not to say that I don't, that nitpicking those things is what I'm trying to say, is that I kind of lose the fun of the movie when I'm sitting there thinking like, well, how the hell is he going to get away with this when you have tax evasion or like falsifying identity or whatever ahead of you? I just feel like there's a lot more to deal with. I don't know. It doesn't feel tied up tightly, I guess.
Not really, but okay. Here's the deleted scene that I want to see beyond the great moment of the evaluator yelling at Ben to get the hell out. I want to see Kevin Spacey's class after he gets the shit kicked out of him in Vegas and has to come back to work. I just want to see him walk into class with like the black eye, the busted nose. He's probably got like a cast on, and the students are just like, Professor Sosa, what happened? And he's just like, don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, because that's
Don't
exactly
gamble,
what
kids.
happens earlier with Ben walking in after being beat up by Lawrence Fishburne. That'd be interesting. I mean, Kevin Spacey deserves it, so
Yeah, I know.
I don't know.
Okay, but do we need to touch on the Kevin Spacey thing? Because I think he actually does a good job in this movie.
I mean,
Like, I think he's a terrible human being, but I think he's does an admirable performance in the film.
I think that's the blanket thing that now with Kevin Spacey is that not somebody we want to associate with anymore, but can't deny that he had acting chops when, he's just separating the art from the artist at a certain point, and it's up to you whether you want to. I mean, I think it was just one of those things where I forgot he was in this movie, so.
Yeah, I forgot he was in this movie too, and then he showed up, and I was like, ooh, oops. That's a big yikes.
Yeah, because now that's also the reason I can't watch Baby Driver, But that's beside the point.
You're just supporting Edgar Wright. You're not supporting Kevin Spacey when you watch Baby Driver.
Yeah.
Put it like that.
I don't know. Well, not to end on...
on the weird note.
Yeah, on the weird note, but that is... David and Dean double feature picture show for this week. Episode.
Oh wait, we didn't even get into which is better.
Oh well, yeah. I'm getting out of myself.
Sir, you've been doing. You need to get out of the casino every once in a while. You're starting to lose track of time.
I guess
all
so.
Right.
I got that. What do they call it? Slot eyes, where they just glaze over at the slot machine.
Oh, where you just been there for you're like, I've only been at the slot machine for 5 minutes, and then you look at your watch and like, I've been here for 5 hours.
Yeah.
All right. So to start off this debate of which film did it better, which film do you think cost more? Can you give me an over under for 21 and Rounders? Just like the old gambling adage. We'll start with 21. How much do you think this film cost to make?
I would suspect that 21 definitely cost more, to the tune of like 50 million.
50 mil?
Yeah. Whereas Rounders cost, it's kind of a because 21 uses special effects and has a few more big names in it.
Yeah.
Rounders at the time, Matt Damon was a big star, but he was a rising star still. So I would say the under on then Rounders is around 20 million.
Okay, so we're going 50 million on 21 and 20 million on Rounders. You overestimated on both of these severely.
Interesting.
Yeah, 21 cost $35 million to make. It grossed $160 million worldwide.
Yeah.
Rounders cost $12 million to make and only grossed $23 million.
That's sad.
Which is, yeah, right? Because I thought Rounders was like a really good movie.
Yeah, by the end of it,
I'm like, this should have made a little bit more.
It's a really tight little story.
Yeah. Well, on that note, because I actually had to look this up because I thought that was weird that Rounders only made that much money. So I looked up how the top earning films of 1999 were, and I'm really disappointed in 1998 here.
Yeah.
So what was the most expensive movie, or what movie made the most money in 1998? You want to take a shot in the dark?
That's actually. May I look up what movies were in 1998?
Sure, go for it.
Okay, because I can't specifically remember what was released that year. Okay, let's see here. Some big names. I see 2 big hitters right there. Half-Baked is definitely not the top.
Half-Baked is a masterpiece, sir. It needs to be in a museum.
So we're guessing top price or top earners?
Top earner.
Okay. I'm flipping through the list. So there are a couple Disney animated films, or I guess one was a Pixar animated film at that point, that I would put as dark horses in the game, both Mulan and Bug's Life. But you also got names like Armageddon. You got names like, where did it go? Saving Private Ryan, The Big Lebowski. So I know that wasn't a top earner because that was kind of a flop at first.
Yeah.
The Truman Show is in there, and that's one of my favorites, and also is pretty I'm going to have to say that top earner is Saving Private Ryan.
Top earner, Saving Private Ryan?
Yeah.
You'd be wrong. It made almost a full $100 million less than our top earner, which is Armageddon.
Yeah, I should have seen that coming.
Armageddon, directed by Michael Bay.
Yeah, I mean that's probably where Michael Bay got his rise going. Is Armageddon now a classic film?
Right.
Which is weird to think that Michael Bay created a classic, but you know,
Armageddon's on the Criterion Collection. Throwing that out there, people.
Yeah.
But yeah, so 1998, but like the top earning film was like $550 million. That was the top earning film or highest grossing film of 1998, and that was Armageddon. And Rounders only made like, what did I say?
23 million.
Yeah, it's only like $23 million.
Which I guess is like doubling the budget, but you know, still not a whole lot of change. I just didn't expect this movie to be like make indie money, you know?
Yeah.
Like it has more to it than that. And it's, I don't know. I recommend if we're going to end up choosing which one is better, I definitely recommend Rounders because like we said, there's some great performances in it. There's a good story. There's some good tension. It's kind of an interesting movie because you get away from the whole cliche of counting cards and you get into poker.
There's a lot more humanity in the film. Like the characters feel a lot more human, a lot less charactery.
Yeah.
Which I mean comes to show like the two leads in this film I think have both won Oscars.
Oh yeah. I'm sure Matt Damon, let's see.
I know Matt Damon won an Oscar for Good Will Hunting. I don't know if he won one for acting. I think Edward Norton's been nominated like 3 times.
Looking this up. So Matt Damon won, Best Actor for both Good Will Hunting and The Martian. Oh, well, he was nominated. And he was actually... Okay, rescind everything I just said. I read before I spoke. Best Actor nominee for Good Will Hunting and Best Actor nominee for The Martian. He was a winner for the original screenplay for Good Will Hunting. But, you know, that's kind of... It's still a pretty good accolade. Though Ed Norton, let's see, he's only been nominated Best Supporting Actor for Birdman, Best Actor for American History X, and Best Supporting Actor for Primal Fear.
He's only ever been nominated? I don't know why. I thought he won. I always thought he won, but I guess he has been nominated like 3 times. But there's like real acting chops and Rounders.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how Fight Club never got him anything, but you know,
right?
I can kind of see
granted, like Fight Club now is like modern classic. I think everybody of a certain age has seen Fight Club.
Yeah, and then I can understand how at the point in time when it came out, which was 1999, the same year he did American History X.
Well, it was the year after American History X. Actually, wait a minute.
Yeah, I guess it would have been.
1998, he did American History X, Rounders, and then he did Fight Club in 99.
It's a lot of heavy hitters.
He was on a roll.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm nothing for that. Although I can, like I was saying, I could definitely see how at the time Fight Club may have been seen as a more commercial film than being one of merit to the Academy, you know?
Yeah.
But on that note, actually a better note.
Did you want to take a...
What was that?
Oh, I was going to ask if you want to take a guess at the best film or the highest grossing film of 2008. But I think we wanted to segue away. So after you, sir.
Finally, on that note, a better note than the one we had before. That is going to be David and Dean's double feature picture show for this week, our 5th episode, and we're still rolling.
Going good.
Dean, or what are we going to be watching this next coming week?
Next week is going to be real interesting. So Next, we're going to be watching Da 5 Bloods and Do the Right Thing, because it can only be Spike Lee. So that one's going to be fun, because I know you wanted to watch Da 5 Bloods, and Do the Right Thing, I think, is one of his best movies. So we're going to see which one's the best Spike Lee film.
Yeah, our first Netflix specific release. I'm actually really excited to see this movie because, we haven't had like a decent war film come out in a while. Or at least we haven't had a decent Vietnam film in a while. It's been kind of a long time since they've done anything on that. And I think Spike Lee adding this black cinema twist to it is going to be really good.
And I think this is going to be the first time where we've watched a film that I haven't seen yet, which is Da 5 Bloods. So that's going to be fun on the bun.
Yeah. So that is going to be the episode for this week. We got to thank you guys for watching. Thank you to Anchor for sponsoring the episode. And Dean, I guess I will see you next week.
I think I'll see you next week.
All right.
Oh, on that, before I forget, everybody follow us on Instagram. We're on _feature podcast. We're on social media now, boys.
We're official.
Real now.
It's official. It's real. But yeah, go follow us, and thank you for listening. See you, Dean.
Peace.